Chapter 451. Her man was still being peeped at. Gu Jingze shook his head helplessly as he put his arm around her and continued walking in. The two of them walked into the resort through a special passageway. The Gu family's bodyguards blocked off outsiders in an orderly fashion, and the normal tourists outside looked on in surprise. They couldn't resist trying to get closer so that they could see what was happening ahead. Watching them leave, Han Kaiying then grunted, "This time, Lin Li, you must win against this little slut. She looks so arrogant right now that I simply want to go over and scold her. This ingrate climbed a high horse and now loves to torture us." Lin Li frowned and said, "I know. Of course, she wanted to win against Lin Che more than anyone else." She also walked over with her pass and went in after the verification. Lin Che and Gu Jingze were immediately noticed once they arrived at the resort. If there was the most eye-catching thing about this year's WW banquet, it would be Lin Che and Lu Chusha's bet. This bet instantly made Lin Che a hot topic in the socialite circle. Everyone couldn't help but guess what exactly Lin Che had to be able to make the #1 socialite, Lu Chusha, challenge her. Of course, to begin with, bringing Gu Jingze along to take part in WW already attracted all the attention. All eyes were on Lin Che. Lin Che and Gu Jingze settled down in the innermost 3-story villa. It was apparently specially arranged. Meanwhile, Lin Li also had a rather nice arrangement under Lu Chusha's care. However, it was a small villa in the front. Han Kaiying was already very satisfied. She had been evicted and was now living in a 3-bedroom apartment outside. That Lin Yukai still refused to bring her back. She had been suffering and living in this villa. Now, she didn't want to ever leave. Lin Che reached the villa and immediately laid on the bed. She had been dead tired recently and now she still had to compete over the next few days. She was extremely nervous and did not want to think of anything else. She only wanted to lie here and never get up. However, at this moment, she saw people coming over to visit them. Seeing their get-up, she assumed that they were some socialites. After all, this place would definitely see a lot of people. The villas here were resort villas and there was little privacy. The fencing outside was low while the windows went from the floor to the ceiling, revealing everything happening inside. Meanwhile, Gu Jingze took his shirt off and walked out from the bathrooms, unaware of the situation. When Lin Che turned around, she could see Gu Jingze's strong muscles exposed to the air. They looked even bigger and his triangular golden body revealed a beautiful merman figure because of his low-waisted pants. His shoulders were broad, so he looked gorgeous when he wore a suit. When he took off his clothes, one could see his broad figure. It gave one a sense of security and a desire to lean on him. Coupled with that freshly washed, gorgeous face still dripping water. Lin Che immediately understood who the socialites outside came to see. They came to see her husband. What on earth? These rich young mistresses were so shameless too. Did they come over to take a peep? Lin Che really thought that a man's sexuality was still very attractive. And Gu Jingze was the strongest contender in male sexuality. Of course, it made many people so excited that they couldn't care about anything else. Lin Che looked at him and asked, "Hey, why did you come out without your clothes on?" Gu Jingze paused and said, "It's not like you've never seen it before." "Seriously, I have seen it before, but others have not," Lin Che replied. Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes and realized something was amiss. He looked outside. The girls outside immediately smiled at him. Gu Jingze's eyes remained unchanged and he simply walked to Lin Che. When Lin Che was still stunned, he already grabbed hold of her waist. "If they want to see, let them see. We must be more gracious and give our guests a good show." Huh. Before she could react, Gu Jingze turned her to her side so that both their side views were facing outside. She bent into a beautiful arc while he kissed her on the lips. Closing his eyes, the way he kissed her made him look like a beautiful prince kissing a sleeping Snow White. That image was so perfect that it took their breaths away. The ladies outside were shocked. They only wanted to see Gu Jingze. Little did they expect to not only see Gu Jingze but also, unfortunately, see a moment that they did not want to see. However, Gu Jingze's bare body was really too charming. Lin Che's petite face blushed as she felt Gu Jingze's skin when he pressed against her. It felt too good. She never stopped feeling amazed whenever she touched him. The more amazing thing was how he kissed her. When he released her, she was still in a daze. However, she still turned her head to see the people outside. Sure enough, they disappeared. She then asked Gu Jingze, "Why did you do that? You broke their hearts. Weren't you jealous just now?" Gu Jingze glanced at her. Who was jealous? Lin Che speechlessly thought that she was not jealous. Why would she be jealous of this? Those women wanted to see and there was no way around it. She was only angry because such a perfect bare body should have only been for her eyes. Now that they saw it, of course, she wasn't happy. Thinking about it, this was Gu Jingze. Such a good man was now all hers. Her heart was full. Lin Che naturally did not know that in the eyes of the socialites outside, she was extremely mysterious. They came here wanting to see Gu Jingze, but they were also curious and wanted to see how Lin Che was like. As soon as they were here, they already gained a lot of attention. Many people were waiting for them to appear. Actually, if they just compared the men, all the socialites could never compare to Lin Che. The man beside her was Gu Jingze. Wasn't she already the winner? Lin Che watched Gu Jingze go in to change his clothes. She laid down and called Yu Minmin. Yu Minmin asked, "How is it? Are you having fun there?" "I'm not in the mood to look at the scenery." "Alright, I already heard about it on my side. Don't talk about how grand it is over there." "Grand? How can it be? I haven't even stepped out yet. I just arrived." "Everybody is saying that you brought Gu Jingze along with you. Do you know what it means for you to bring Gu Jingze with you?" What do you mean I brought him along? He followed me himself. I thought I was going alone." "He's there to cheer you on. He didn't need to go actually. Also, not everybody participating would bring their man along. This is not a rule, but he still went with you. Because he went with you, you will have strength." This is Gu Jingze's first time attending such an event, so everybody was very surprised and wanted to see him very badly. After all, Gu Jingze is used to keeping a low profile and many people cannot see him if they wanted to. To be able to meet him there, of course, they would want to see more of him. Chapter 452, Lin Che had special treatment in the banquet. Lin Che finally understood. Gu Jingze came here for her. Yes, otherwise why would he come to some women's event? Lin Che sat there feeling extremely touched. When she went in, she saw Gu Jingze standing there. His head was lowered as he folded his clothes. He did not wear a top and his strong back looked very beautiful. Lin Che silently walked over and hugged him tightly from the back. Gu Jingze was stunned as he felt Lin Che's hands holding his waist. It was extremely intimate. Gu Jingze smiled. "Why, are you only aware of your man's value now that you saw people peeping at me?" No, he had always been very valuable and she knew it. Fine, actually, she didn't know that he was so valuable. She had always been unclear when it came to this aspect. She didn't even know exactly how many wealthy people there were in C Nation. She didn't know how many people were well known or how scary and unapproachable they were to an outsider. However, sometimes she felt fortunate that it was this way. Because if she knew from the beginning how scary the Gu family was, she probably wouldn't have had the courage to drug Gu Jingyu. And she wouldn't have met Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze turned around. "Why are you suddenly so sticky? I thought that your back view suddenly looked very good." "How good does it look?" He lowered his head and held her chin up. "It just looks good. So good that you want to jump me." Lin Che said exasperatedly, "Idiot, who would want to jump you? When you're on top, you're jumping me." She had never really been on top. Because she was too lazy to move and was just staying on top without moving. He was extremely impatient and pulled her down to continue. "I'm going. I'm ignoring you." Lin Che turned to leave but Gu Jingze stopped her. He scooped her up and put her down on the bed. He lowered his head. His eyes were glistening like pearls as he stared intensely at her. "Come at me." Saying such ridiculous words with such serious eyes and in such a serious manner, there probably weren't many men who would be like this. Lu Chusha only arrived in the afternoon and she immediately went to talk to Lin Li. Think of a way to win against Lin Che at the start. I'll definitely beat her in horseback riding, so I guess she won't be pinning her hopes on it. However, what she doesn't know is that during the riding, you will help me bring her down first. Lu Chusha said it very subtly, but Lin Li still understood immediately. Was she saying to make her completely unable to participate in the subsequent segment? Lu Chusha was using someone else to do her dirty work. She was really too ruthless. However, Lin Li had to listen to her. After all, it was all thanks to Lu Chusha that she was able to come here. Otherwise, she probably would not be able to attend this banquet anymore. On the first day, they attended an indoor dinner. Everybody dressed up and attended it so that they could get to know one another. Lin Che went ahead first while Gu Jingze still needed to handle some things in the room. Because Gu Jingze delayed too much time in the afternoon, he couldn't do his work properly. He could only make up for it at night. Lin Che was radiant. She dressed up and went in. Lin Li first arrived. There were special butlers at the door to welcome them to the ladies' room where they placed their outerwear or other valuable items in a storage box. Lin Li took off her shawl and saw a few attendants welcoming Lin Che in. After they led her in, Lin Che practically didn't need to do anything as the butler already helped place Lin Che's belongings inside. Lin Che saw Lin Li at the side. She ignored the latter and sat down to change her shoes. Lin Li pursed her lips and asked her butler, "Why are her things placed inside and you guys still treat her suspiciously while you guys treat me like this?" The butler said, "Miss Lin, don't panic. It's because of her special status, so we must take extra care of her." "How is her status special?" "She is also participating in the banquet. Everyone in here has a position in C Nation too. She is Gu Jingze's wife. Mrs. Gu is naturally different from others. You probably can't afford to offend Gu Jingze, Miss Lin, and we can't afford to offend him either. Furthermore, if we're able to show our faces in front of Mrs. Gu and if she is happy with us, she might give us an advantage that could last us for a lifetime." "What Mrs. Gu? Wasn't she merely Gu Jingze's woman? When did she become Mrs. Gu?" However, that butler didn't bother with Lin Li after that. He simply left her there and quickly tended to that Mrs. Gu. Meanwhile, Lin Li could only stand there and watch as the butlers revolved around Lin Che. But Lin Che was an illegitimate child. How could she become Mrs. Gu? Lin Li couldn't comprehend it. Everyone knew that Lin Che was by Gu Jingze's side, but Gu Jingze never held a wedding. When Lu Chusha entered the banquet hall, she immediately saw many women dressed up in different styles. This place was really a gathering of C Nation's most powerful women. Where there were daughters, it was indispensable to have fragrances, branded items, precious gems and diamonds. Any of the jewels on these ladies was enough to amaze anyone besides them. If an outsider were to take a look, they would definitely be stunned. However, WW Banquet was only a gathering of the upper-class insiders. It was nothing casual and not just anybody could take part in it. There also wouldn't be reporters trying to take sneak shots here. This place was well protected and was especially guarded. The moment Lu Chusha entered, she saw many familiar faces coming over to greet her. The WW Banquet had been hosted in C Nation for more than 10 years. This three-time champion was unprecedented. Thus, everyone actually quite admired this top socialite. "Chusha, how come you came alone?" "My father and brother are here, but they're already inside. It must be really grand for you this time. If you didn't come, everyone would have thought that something happened to you." "Sorry to make myself a joke," Lu Chusha said proudly. Internally, she was feeling very satisfied to be noticed by these socialites. That was not an easy feat and it seemed like she made the right move this time. She just needed to defeat Lin Che completely this time. By then, she would be the complete top socialite in C Nation. She was curious as to why Lin Che was still not here. Did she bail at the last minute because she did not dare to come? She still wanted to show Lin Che what a socialite's world was like. It was something that a small celebrity like her could never know. Everyone passing by looked at Lu Chusha and greeted her. "You will definitely win this time. With you participating in WW Banquet, there's no need to consider anyone else. I heard that someone even wanted to challenge you. That person must be really tired of living. Chapter 453. The man beside her was her asset. After some time, Lin Che finally arrived. Lin Che is here. Where? She just came in through the entrance with Gu Jingze. Lin Che waited for Gu Jingze at the entrance before they came in together. Everyone heard about this Lin Che person, but never actually saw Lin Che in real life. Everyone knew that those tabloids on TV were mostly fake and orchestrated. A person's true character could only be seen in real life. Thus, when everyone heard that Lin Che was actually participating in the WW banquet, their interests peaked. This woman was also arrogant enough to bring Gu Jingze with her. Gu Jingze's tall figure walked in and his sharp eyes swept across the entire floor. Those untainted eyes were really so darn attractive. Everyone was amazed by his appearance and their sighs were endless. It's Gu Jingze. It really is him. Can I take a photo? Take a photo. Are you looking for death? Tisk, tisk, looks at the woman beside him. Following that, jealous eyes all turned to Lin Che. She wore a simple pencil skirt and didn't wear any special accessories. She was dressed in silvery gray and looked extremely groomed and gracious. Although her simple outfit was not outstanding, it really showed her figure. Nobody could find faults with Lin Che. She looked a lot prettier in real life and nobody could see any plastic surgery scars. Thus, everyone could only scoff and say, she doesn't have anything more than we do. How did Gu Jingze take a liking to her? Maybe she is good in bed. This was the first time Lin Che saw so many women gathered in one place. Looking at all the different pairs of eyes, she already thought to herself that 3 women were enough to cause drama. There were so many women here, there really was a sense of danger today. However, under the light, these eyes were all staring lustfully at her man. Lin Che felt as if she was being torn apart by all their jealous eyes. Lin Che almost wanted to let go of Gu Jingze's waist. But when she wanted to move, Gu Jingze took her hand and firmly placed it in the hook of his arm. He was not letting her move. Lin Che, you're here, a familiar voice sounded from above. Lin Che looked up to see Lu Qinyu standing there. Lin Che froze. Lu Qinyu smiled and said, come on up. There are seats here. Lin Che said, okay, Uncle Lu. Lu Qinyu was seated upstairs. Gu Jingze looked up and narrowed his eyes. Then, he turned to Lin Che and frowned subtly. Lin Che was also puzzled. Why is Uncle Lu here? Gu Jingze took her in and spoke as they walked. Actually, I found out about some things recently, but I haven't had the chance to tell you. What is it? Gu Jingze stopped to look at Lin Che. Lin Che, your mother's name is Su Sen, right? That's right. But what did that have to do with Old Man Lu? Gu Jingze said, I found out that Old Man Lu once stayed at your mother's old home before. Remember when we visited Granny and saw a photo of your mother with several people? Yes, don't tell me that those people. One of them was Old Man Lu. What? Gu Jingze said, he used to be your mother's teacher. He recommended her to attend university in B City and she entered the university that he taught at. Lin Che never would have guessed that there could be such a fate. I've never heard my mother talk about how she came to B City. However, I was still small at that time and mother would never tell me things like that. That's right, your mother used to be Old Man Lu's protege, but she left later on. She must have met my dad after that and then began her tortuous life. Lin Che thought about it and really felt the injustice for her mother. But I have to remind you of one thing, Gu Jingze said properly. Hearing him sound strict, Lin Che stopped and looked at him. What? Your mother's relationship with Old Man Lu in the past may not have been ordinary. Lin Che froze. Gu Jingze held her hand and waited for her reaction. Gu Jingze then said slowly, this is not something I can confirm. Neither have I investigated it in detail. After all, it didn't feel right to go overboard with the investigation of Lin Che's mother. Lin Che silently looked ahead. So, Old Man Lu is fond of me because he knows about my mother. He doesn't know. Lin Che looked up. Gu Jingze said, I think it's better if you tell Old Man Lu yourself. After all, he thought it wasn't right for him to tell old man Lu about Lin Che's mother. Gu Jingze once again held Lin Che's hand up. Come on. Let's go up. Okay. Lin Che was still a little absent-minded. When she saw old man Lu welcoming her, she still hadn't reacted. Little Che, you're here. Come sit over here. Lu Baikan was also there. He looked at Lin Che and nodded. After the formalities, Gu Jingze pressed Lin Che down to sit there. She raised her head and looked at Lu Qinyu. She couldn't imagine that her mother and this man in front of her could have a past relationship between them. Lu Baikan leaned against his seat and said, "These women are still so boring. I really don't know why we come here." Lu Qinyu replied, "Our Lu family developed this island and we also recruited them to pick this place. Of course, we have to show our support." Lin Che said in shock, "This belongs to the Lu family." Lu Baikan said indignantly, "We didn't buy this island to hold such boring events." "Yes, it was for your damn fishing boats." Lin Che didn't quite understand. Lu Qinyu explained to Lin Che gently, "This lad can't do things correctly in all these years. He secretly bought this small island and many fishing boats to fish here. After I found out about it, we then tidied up this place and developed it." Lin Che thought speechlessly, they could secretly buy islands. When these wealthy people were stubborn, they could really leave one speechless. Lu Baikan pursed his lips and took a deep breath. On the side, Gu Jingze said, "Brother Baikan is really so carefree and leisurely." Lu Baikan retorted, "Did you think everybody is a workaholic like you? Spending my days fishing is my wish over these years. Sigh, it's too bad the old man put his foot down on me. Now, I even have to waste my time coming here and watch these pretentious women on my happy grounds. Do you think I can still be happy?" Gu Jingze chuckled lightly, "To me, making money is already a hobby." Lu Baikan looked at Lin Che, "I really don't know why you married him." Lin Che laughed, "Never mind. I can just see his face. Why would I care what he does?" "Fine, you're right." Lu Baikan now had a pretty good impression of Lin Che. After getting to know her better, he was finally not so cautious and was willing to speak casually with her. Chapter 454. Old Man Lu, how exactly were you related to my mother? Lin Che could also tell that this Lu Baikan was rather unruly. He was calm and indifferent like Gu Jingze, but they were not the same. However, it was rather interesting too. They sat there and chatted. Lu Chusha saw Lin Che actually sitting with her own father and brother. They were chatting so happily that it made her furious. Her family was actually standing on that slut's side. Were they still her family? Was a family such a hindrance? Lu Chusha walked to them. She looked at Lu Qinyu and Lin Che, "Who said you could sit here? This is my seat." Lu Qinyu frowned and gently placed his palm on the table. "Chusha, there are so many seats. Since when has this become yours?" Lu Chusha replied, "It's mine if I said it's mine. Anyway, this island belongs to our Lu family. Whatever I say is mine will be mine." Lu Baikan watched and said, "Chusha, I think I bought this island. I'm the owner and if I want someone to sit here, they will sit here. What's your business?" Lu Chusha looked appalled at Lu Baikan. Lu Baikan was also standing on Lin Che's side now. Lu Chusha angrily smacked the table, "Who is your sister, me or her?" Lu Baikan, "What exactly do you mean?" Lu Baikan also did not hold back. He simply stood up and straightened his shirt. He towered over Lu Chusha and looked down at her. "What? Do you want to pick a fight with me here? I'm not afraid to be laughed at anyway. If you aren't afraid, try me. Let people see what kind of manners this so-called top socialite has." You. Lu Chusha and Lu Baikan fought since they were young. However, how could she ever win against this tall and mighty brother? Behind, Lu Qinyu was so angry that he was huffing and glaring. Okay, just look at you two. You're not acting like siblings. Chusha, go to the side and don't bother us here again." "Humph, fine, I'll go right now. Since you like Lin Che that much, I'm not going back home anymore. You guys can take Lin Che back to be your daughter and sister." Lu Chusha glared hatefully at Lin Che, turned, and then left. Lu Qinyu followed. "Fine, don't come back." Lin Che watched Lu Qinyu get angry. She thought for a while, told Gu Jingze that she was going to check on the old man, then got up and went after him. Liu Baikan watched and said to Gu Jingze, seriously. How old is she already? She was like this when she was young and now she is still like this. Gu Jingze only looked up silently and watched Lin Che leave. Liu Qinyu saw Liu Chusha leave as he stood there, still fuming. Lin Che quickly said, Uncle, don't be angry. Liu Qinyu said, sigh, sometimes I really envy the Gu family. All their sons and daughters are so good while my two children are so disobedient whether they are young or grown up. Lin Che bit her lip and pondered. Then, she said to Liu Qinyu, Uncle Liu, you don't need to get angry with Chusha because of me. The more you act like this, the angrier she will be. Liu Qinyu said, I believe that this stubborn and feisty personality of hers is not good. I really don't know who she takes after. Her brother may not listen to me, but he isn't like this. But she. Lin Che looked at Liu Qinyu. I also have something I want to ask you actually. Ah, what is it? He lowered his head and was extremely amiable. Lin Che asked, you and Su Sen, how were you two related? Liu Qinyu halted, his expression obviously puzzled. He asked, how are you related to Su Sen? Lin Che replied, Su Sen is my mother. Liu Qinyu's entire body quivered. He almost fell to the ground. Lin Che quickly helped him up. He looked at least 10 years older than her mother and didn't seem like he had anything going on with her mother, but Lin Che did feel strange. Looking at old man Liu's reaction, it was hard to believe that they had an ordinary student-teacher relationship. Old man Liu looked at Lin Che with his mouth agape. You are Su Sen's daughter? Why yes. Old man Liu said, okay, good, good. You look so alike. I actually thought about it long ago. You look so alike but I didn't think it was nice to ask you directly, so I didn't ask. Gu Jingze told me, so I wanted to ask you because I know too little about my mother. I just want to know a little more about her past. How is she now? My mother already passed away a long time ago. Liu Qinyu's face was once again filled with pain. It seemed to drown his old eyes. Lin Che could only hold on to Liu Qinyu. After some time, old man Liu slowly recovered from that immense bout of pain. He sighed and looked at Lin Che. Who would have thought? She was still so young, so active, and at that impulsive age. Who would have thought that she would actually already be gone just like that? He said, that's right. Su Sen and I knew each other. Actually, we didn't only just know each other. When I went to the village that year, she was only in her teens. She was very talented and smart. She kept pace with her studies and was full of spirit. I thought that it would be a waste for her to stay there, so I pushed her to go to university in B City. At that time, I helped her revise every day and I helped her through her exams. I also told her about the world outside. Sure enough, she really lived up to my grooming and very quickly got admitted to my university. I then began to teach her professional classes. At that time, I was still a young professor. I was full of vitality and always felt invincible. I recommended her to pursue her studies overseas and wanted her to get even better grades. Thus, I continued helping her in her revision and learning. We practically faced each other from dusk to dawn every day. It's just that at that time, it was unexpected. We were two young people and ultimately, our feelings for each other unknowingly developed. We knew that our age difference was too big. I am a teacher and she was a student. She was my protégé. If anything between us was discovered, people would definitely talk. It might also end up affecting her education path. So, I got married. However, after I got married, she was heartbroken. Seeing her heartbroken also agonized me. We spent a year looking at each other, but unable to get close. After that, she lost all hope and did not want to continue her studies with us. She also didn't listen to my suggestion to go overseas and simply left my line of vision. I didn't see her again after that. He looked at Lin Che. I also often think that maybe I didn't do enough. At that time, I was well aware that there shouldn't have been feelings. However, I still let her get too close to me and it led to her disappointment. All these years, I have been regretting it deeply. It's a pity that I can no longer look for her anymore. Lin Che only looked ahead and mumbled, so, it's like that. Actually, she could imagine it. Her mother was young once too. She was bound to have her own feelings and love experiences. Chapter 455. So they used to love each other. But it turned out to be such a tragic romance. It was just like how she felt about Qin Qing. Actually, everyone had a fond yet painful love experience when they were young. However, she now already understood that she and Qin Qing were just a moment's dream while her mother's dream lasted for many, many years. Lin Che looked at Lu Qinyu. Uncle Lu, don't be sad. All these happened years ago and you must have wanted what was best for my mother. That was why you made such a choice. Lu Qinyu looked at Lin Che. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? This person in front of him was her daughter. Was this heaven's will to send her daughter right to him? To remind him once again of that woman he let down? It was too bad that there were some things he couldn't say to Lin Che, but he knew that no words could describe their relationship or how hard they tried to stay apart. Lu Qinyu only looked at this girl, feeling something in his heart. This was her daughter and he very much wanted to treat her better. It was not to make up for the past, but perhaps it was a, love me, love my dog, kind of feeling. When Han Kaiying and her daughters entered, they were stunned by the entire scene. They had never attended such a high-end event. Now, they felt as if they just entered a whole new world. Han Kaiying said, look at all the brand clothing these ladies are wearing. The people we usually meet still wear some Tiffany or Chanel to show off. Look at these people now. Those pearls and gems must be extremely expensive. Lin Li said, Mom, stop staring at them. You're embarrassing. At this moment, Lin Li saw Lu Chusha and wanted to call out to her. However, Lu Chusha caught a glimpse of Lin Li and didn't seem bothered to acknowledge her. She turned her head and walked away. Han Kaiying asked, why is this Miss Lu like that? So what if she's a rich man's daughter? Isn't it a bit too arrogant to ignore someone like this? Lin Li took a deep breath. Beggars can't be choosers. Don't talk too much. Han Kaiying of course also understood. She merely complained a little bit before being drawn back to the people in front of them. Looking at such a grand banquet, she was already very satisfied. She really wished that she could always attend banquets like this and not have to go back to that 3-bedroom apartment. The grandest banquet she ever attended was Qin Qing's engagement party. Seeing all the wealthy people there, she already thought that it was amazing. She only realized today that the Qin family could not compare to this. If Lin Li could win this time and snag a wealthy man here, that would be truly amazing. However, at this time, Han Kaiying also saw that Lin Che was sitting at the second level. The 3 women were arranged to sit in a corner and left alone. The people here didn't know them and also felt that their status was probably nothing much since they were unknown in the socialite circle. Thus, nobody bothered about them at all. They could only watch as people walked around. Han Kaiying looked up, feeling unjust. Lin Che's seat was actually that good. She huffed and asked, how come she can sit there? Lin Yu said, Mom, don't you see who is beside her? The rich princess from the Lu family that sister knows is very capable, right? But sister only knows this one Lu family princess. Now, look at Lin Che. She's sitting beside the first young master of the Lu family while the Lu family's old master is across her. On her other side is Gu Jingze. Of course, she can sit there. Han Kaiying felt that the circumstances were even more unjust. With Gu Jingze, the people beside her now are also so capable. Lin Yu said sourly, seriously, isn't she just someone who did chores in our house? She even used to wash my clothes. Exactly, she also used to clean our rooms. Of course, Lin Li also felt unjust. She thought about tomorrow's horseback riding event. Tomorrow, even if she couldn't win against Lin Che tomorrow, she would definitely show her. Going back from the banquet, Lu Qinyu walked Lin Che out. If you meet any problems the next few days, remember to ask Baiken for help. Lin Che quickly replied, thanks, Uncle Lu. Gu Jingze left with Lin Che. On the way back, Lin Che tugged at her shawl, looking dignified. Gu Jingze asked, have you told old man Lu already? Yes, how did you know? As they just left, Lin Che hadn't had the chance to tell him. He looked at her, I guessed from your face. Lin Che thought it made sense. Gu Jingze was such a smart person. She definitely couldn't hide it from him. He would have already understood long ago with one look. Lin Che replied, yes. I've asked him and he also admitted it. He had a relationship with my mother, which ended peacefully. He didn't tell me in great detail, but I feel that there is no need for him to treat me so well. I feel bad that he treats me so nicely because of his past relationship with my mother. Well, he already wanted to treat you well before he knew about it. Furthermore, if we don't consider the relationship, he used to teach your mother. They knew each other for so many years. Now that you don't have a mother and you're all alone, he wants to treat you well because he pities you. Don't feel like his care for your mother is being passed down to you. Actually, this made sense too. However, Lin Che still felt sheepish. Gu Jingze said, if you want to know more, I can actually bring one of your mother's classmates here. Huh, bring them here? Lin Che looked at him in surprise. Gu Jingze nodded silently. His eyes glistened as he looked at her. Lin Che didn't think that Gu Jingze would quietly find and bring someone here without her knowing. The lady who came also looked like an intellect. If Lin Che's mother was still around, she would have been about the same age. In the room, it was a little difficult to hide her excitement. She didn't expect herself have such a wonderful encounter someday, meeting such a strange person who suddenly pulled her out of her ordinary life. Lin Che looked at the lady and asked Gu Jingze strangely, how did you so quickly bring her here? Gu Jingze spoke in a low voice, I sent my men to look for her after knowing about it. Just now at the banquet, I sent a helicopter to bring her here. Gu Jingze looked at the woman in front of him and said, the person who brought you here already told you what to do, right? Yes, already did, she said excitedly. She had already been told on the way that there were many rules. She was not allowed to talk about anything else. She could only answer when asked. Gu Jingze said, I know that you were classmates with Susen in Q University. So, tell us everything you know that happened that year. Oh, alright. Chapter 456. It was just, love me, love my dog. As she spoke, she lifted her head to recall. I remember that Susan was the prettiest girl in our school. Many guys were interested in her, but she was a bit aloof and didn't like getting too close to people. So in that year, she never dated anyone. On the other hand, Professor Liu was the most stylish professor in our school. He was also the youngest professor. It was rumored that his family was worth millions and he was rich. Thus, many girls were very fond of him. Even if they weren't his students, they would still attend his classes. His style of teaching was interesting and funny, and he would leave immediately after class. He never gave us a chance to speak with him, but at that time, he only treated Susan very well. We didn't realize it at the beginning. After that, we realized that when Professor Liu talked in his lessons, he always faced her and called her out to answer questions. Later on, the school wanted to send a list of names for overseas education. He even specially called Susan out of our dormitory. At that time, we were all especially envious of her. But later on, she was always revising with Professor Liu alone. It was still acceptable if it was a short period. Everybody knew that Susan was good in her studies, to begin with, and it was only right that teachers would pay attention to her. But over time, the gossip spread. Everybody said that Susan already had something going on with Professor Liu. Some people said that they saw Professor Liu and Susan chatting along Linyan Road. Some said that they saw them eating together. Some even said that Susan didn't return to the dormitory after school. She left with Professor Liu in his little sports car. The gossips manifested and turned ugly. People said that the student and teacher slept together. They said that Susan used her body in exchange for a chance to go overseas. After that, Professor Liu suddenly got married to a businessman's daughter. Susan also no longer had one-to-one classes with him. These rumors then slowly calmed down. Lin Che thought that this did not differ much from what old man Liu told her. But from another's mouth, she heard nastier stuff and more romantic stuff. After telling her story, Gu Jingze then sent her out. Lin Che said to Gu Jingze, it looks like they really were together that year. I think it is so romantic. A teacher-student romance, it's a pity it didn't take place now. If it happened now, there definitely wouldn't be as much gossip. Perhaps. Also, she looked up to gaze at Gu Jingze. Thank you for going to such lengths to find answers for me. If you really want to thank me, stop letting your mind run wild. Come on. Let's go wash up and sleep. Yes, let's sleep. I still have a vicious battle tomorrow. I need to take a good rest. Gu Jingze hugged her and said, all right then. You can rest more today. Hey, no, let go of me. I want to rest, what are you doing? Yes, you'll rest, I'll do the moving today. The next day. On the island's racecourse. Under the pergola, many women were dressed in their riding suits. They looked so heroic that they did not lose to men in one single bit. Lin changed into her riding suit long ago. She was very fortunate that she was still a rich man's daughter in the city, so she learned all these things that rich men's daughters learned since they were young. Therefore, she wasn't afraid when she stood there now. Han Qiang saw those wealthy madams and bosses watching from upstairs. She quickly tidied Lin Li's clothes. Perform well. Even if you fall, do it beautifully. Do you see? Those bosses are all watching. Oh my, I see one who is watching you. Lin Li squinted and looked in front of her. She lifted her head and puffed up her chest, smiling as she looked at those bosses. Just then, Lu Chusha arrived and cheers could be heard on stage. A few lads specially came to see Lu Chusha ride and support her. Their passion for Lu Chusha made many people envious. Han Qiang scoffed as she watched Lu Chusha come out on a horse. She strutted in a figure 8 around and then pulled the reins to stop the horse. That looked rather nice. Han Qiang said, seriously, she's just the rich princess of the Lu family. There's nothing to be so triumphant about. If she wasn't born with a golden spoon, she wouldn't be any better than you. Lin Li, outdo her today. See how those lads fawn over her. If one of them takes a liking to you, our family can start a whole new life. Lin Li pouted, she is the top socialite. How can we compare to her? Lin Li thought that Lu Chusha was really something. A true socialite simply had the poise and elegance. After that, Lin Che also finally arrived. Lin Che came out from behind. She didn't look as poised as Lu Chusha, only appearing plainly from behind. Wearing her red riding suit, she appeared in front of the audience with Gu Jingze. They looked extremely low profile, but with Gu Jingze, how could they ever not attract attention? The crowd was already sighing with excitement. Seeing Gu Jingze in a riding suit today, he looked so dashing that people wanted to exclaim how handsome he was. Lin Che didn't bother about these fangirls. She only looked ahead at Lu Chusha. She revealed a contemptuous face at Lin Che as if secretly provoking her. This made Lin Che's blood begin to boil. No matter what, she had to give it her all today. The horse riding event is about to begin. In our horse riding competition, we are not only judging speed, but also accuracy. Can everybody see the forest up ahead? Participants must go through the forest smoothly, take a hat accurately, and not fall from the horse. Whoever takes the most number of hats will get the highest score. And as everybody knows, the final score is related to our final honor, which is to be crowned the true top socialite of the WW party this year. Ladies, off you go. Lin Che got up on her horse. She turned back to look at Gu Jingze. That face that always only had one expression somehow made her feel safe. At the sound of the whistle, the competition finally began. Lin Che immediately dashed ahead. Lu Chusha shot a look at Lin Li. Lin Li got the hint. Lin Che wasn't that good at riding a horse. After practicing, she could finally at least walk a path. Thankfully, they were surrounded by bodyguards to ensure that nothing happened to these socialite ladies. Otherwise, if something happened, nobody could afford to bear the responsibility. All of these ladies were from an elite family in C Nation. Although Lin Che wasn't good at horse riding, she did look very good on a horse. Those lads on stage watched her turn here and there, seemingly unable to find the direction. She looked so absent-minded yet adorable. They could not help feeling that way, especially when she looked so good in that red and black riding suit. Beauties simply looked good no matter what they did. They could be silly and still be interesting. Chapter 457. She can forget about leaving the horse riding competition in one piece. Just then, someone called out, Lin Che, you're gorgeous. A pair of cold eyes immediately stared daggers over. That person then remembered that Lin Che was no ordinary woman, she was Gu Jingze's woman. She could never be tainted by anybody else. Lin Che blushed. She finally found the direction and quickly dashed towards the forest. Lin Li followed after. Lin Che was still moving in that direction when she felt Lin Li catching up from behind. With one glance, she suspiciously wondered if Lin Li wasn't competing, but was specially out to watch her. She could not be at ease. She quickly moved away from Lin Li and walked in another direction. However, Lin Li followed close behind, her eyes fixated on Lin Che. Lin Li thought, if I can't take your life today, I'll at least take half of it. I'll let you get trampled beyond recognition by your own horse. Lin Li chased after Lin Che. Lin Che began to feel more uneasy, believing that nothing good was going to happen if Lin Li came over. She was trying to avoid Lin Li, but she simply couldn't shake Lin Li off. Lin Li soon caught up to her and grunted at Lin Che, Gu Jingze isn't here now. Lin Che said, Lin Li, don't get used by Lu Chusha. People like her are extremely selfish. If something really happens, she will not protect you. Why, are you jealous that Lu Chusha and I are in cahoots? Haha, it's too bad. Lu Chusha and I are on very good terms. She is truly a famous person and she's a rich family's young mistress. Who do you think you are to show off in front of me? How deluded. Lin Che couldn't be bothered to say anything else to her. She simply continued to head forward. Seeing Lin Li's eyes in cold light and forcing herself to chase Lin Che grew anxious. Lin Che, you came today alive but I'll make sure you leave dead, Lin Li exclaimed and dashed forward. She took out a hairpin that she prepared long ago and stabbed it in the ass of Lin Che's horse. The horse whinnied and sped up. Lin Li laughed out loud as she watched Lin Che, who was about to fall at any moment. Perhaps she would get trampled to death if she fell. Lin Li was extremely happy. Once Lin Che was no longer an obstacle to her, Lu Chusha would definitely protect her if anything happened. She was elated. She would certainly benefit greatly from this. Lin Che shook about on top. She clung onto the horse's neck as her foot touched the ground. She was swayed left and right. If she were to go down, she would probably hit against a tree. However, if she didn't go down, it would be no good with the horse thrashing about. Just then, a small pond ahead immediately gave Lin Che a glimmer of hope. As she approached it, she prepared herself. She knew that this was her only chance. If she didn't grab it, she might really end up losing her life. Even if she didn't die, she might get injured and would not be able to take part in the competition anymore. Looked at the pond drawing closer, she used all her might. At this point, she no longer felt fear as she thrust herself forward and jumped. Ah! With a splash, she fell into the water. Something happened, something happened. Someone yelled from the spectator stand. Lin Che fell into the water. People on the spectator stand were stunned. Because they were in the forest, nobody could see what exactly happened. Thus, the audience all stood up and talked among themselves. At this moment, at the spectator stand, a figure held the railing and charmingly jumped off the spectator stand. It was Gu Jingze. He marched a few steps and casually took a horse. Hopping up on the horse, he was extraordinarily handsome. The caretaker quickly said, second young master, no. You can't go in, we've already sent help, don't. Gu Jingze looked coolly at the caretaker who was stopping him. On the horse, he simply stretched out his leg and kicked the caretaker. The person fell to the ground. Gu Jingze looked down at him and said coldly, get lost. The voice alone, without any other emotion, was enough to send someone shivering in fear. Gu Jingze's appearance already scared people normally. Looking at the Gu Jingze now, nobody dared to stop him. Gu Jingze glanced back and then lightly prodded the horse's belly with his heels and propelled forward. Everybody watched and thought that Gu Jingze looked so good riding a horse. Especially with that move, he was way too handsome. Also with that vainglorious feeling, he was really the one and only Gu Jingze. Nobody could be stronger or more powerful than him. Furthermore, this was all for Lin Che. Everyone was really crazily jealous of that woman who could make him so devoted. Meanwhile, the Lu family members were also already on their way with many security guards following them. When Gu Jingze arrived, Lin Che was already lifted out of the water. She was soaked and still in shock, but there didn't seem to be anything wrong with her body. Although it hurt a little, she could feel that there was no injury. Thankfully, the water was deep but not too deep. Gu Jingze pulled on the reins and jumped down from the horse. He looked at Lin Che and ran straight to her. He hugged Lin Che tightly in his arms. Meanwhile, Lin Li watched from afar. Little did she expect Lin Che to actually avert danger and jump into the water at that moment. She merely fell into the water, yet tons of people came and crowded around her within seconds. The people who came included the Lu and Gu families and Gu Jingze who came at top speed. She was just a lass who fell into the water. Was there a need for so many people to panic? It was just one Lin Che. What was so important about her? She simply couldn't get used to seeing Lin Che be protected like that. To be treated like an important person by so many people when she actually had no power or strength, she was nothing. Lin Che was brought back very quickly. Everybody was also very surprised. Lin Che was protected by Gu Jingze. He even put his coat over Lin Che. Wearing Gu Jingze's huge coat on her weak and soaked body, she looked extremely pitiful. All the gentlemen on the spectator stand couldn't sit still. Helpless, many people were helping Lin Che below. Lu Baikan was also watching at the side, telling people to be gentle with her. Everybody really had no clue how important this Lin Che person was. It seemed like she wasn't simple. She not only was favored by Gu Jingze, but she was also even favored by the powerful Lu family. The competition outside still went on. Needless to say, the final winner had to be Lu Chusha, who had the highest score. And Lin Che could only helplessly watch as her score was struck off. Lin Che rested in the room. After examinations, the doctor said that there were no injuries on her body. This made everybody relieved. Lu Qinyu also already came all the way here. He looked at Lin Che and asked, "Lass, tell me. How exactly did this happen? I'll definitely help you." Gu Jingze was already squinting his eyes as he stared outside. "Old man Lu, don't need to get worked up. I'll naturally find whoever was behind this and make them pay." Outside. On the racecourse. Chapter 458. I will make her wish she was dead. The security already quickly pushed someone to the front. Everyone watched from the outside. The competition had just ended and they were all discussing, not about how outstanding Lu Chusha was in the competition, but how a lot of people cared about Lin Che when she fell in the water. Lin Li was pushed to the front. She angrily asked, "Why are you guys pushing me? Seriously?" At this moment, Gu Jingze's figure appeared below the spectator stand. Looking at Gu Jingze's cold demeanor, the audience fell silent and looked at Lin Li. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Li. "Who made you do this? I'll give you a chance today. If you tell me, I will let you off. If you don't, I won't care if you are Lin Che's sister or not. You stabbed Lin Che's horse and I will definitely make you pay." This was the first time Lin Li saw Gu Jingze's fuming expression. It sent shivers down her spine. She subconsciously went to find Lu Chusha. However, she saw Lu Chusha, who was already walking over. She stared at Lin Li with indifference. Lu Chusha even narrowed her eyes and pursed her lips as if threatening her. If Lin Li told him the truth, Lu Chusha would never let her off. Lin Li was uneasy, but Gu Jingze couldn't possibly do anything to her. No matter what, she was Lin Che's sister and Lin Che was fine, wasn't she? Lin Li said, "It's me, I did it. I hate Lin Che. Is that enough?" Gu Jingze scoffed, "Just from looking at you, I know that you wouldn't dare." Lin Li smiled coldly. "Why wouldn't I dare? She is merely an illegitimate child. When we were young, she even washed my socks and prepared my daily footbath. Her mother was a third party and now she is taking part in the WW party. What right does she have? Does she really think that she can compete with all those true socialites? She will never." Before Lin Li finished, Gu Jingze's eyes had already darkened. There was still no warmth on his face. It was so cold that he looked like a finely carved piece of ice. He looked good, but he was just that cold. The darkness in his eyes circulated like the silence before the storm. It made people feel really oppressed. Not one person there dared to make a sound. They only looked at Gu Jingze. He then said, "Fine. Since it's like that, take her away." Lin Li yelled, "You can't kill me, neither can you do anything to me. Killing me would be illegal. Even if you rule the world, you can't kill me. Humph. Gu Jingze's coldness seemed to be coming out from his nostrils. He couldn't be bothered to look at her. He gazed straight ahead. No, I won't let those who offend my people die. That would be letting them off too easily. Send her to the Golden Triangle. The drug peddlers there seem to lack women recently. They have been oppressed too much. Tell them that this is a little star. They will definitely and most certainly enjoy making good use of her. Everybody gasped. It was called the Golden Triangle but was more often called the Poison Triangle. There was no need to explain what it meant to send her there. One would also know what she would have to do there. So ruthless. Lin Li froze. She was better off dead. She had never thought about what kind of future that would be. She then quickly looked for Lu Chusha's figure. Lu Chusha was shaken, but at this moment, she stepped out in front of Gu Jingze. Jingze, don't be angry. Lin Che is injured now. Why don't you take her back to B City? She doesn't have to take part in the rest of the competition. However, Lu Baikan pulled Lu Chusha back. That's enough. Stop adding more problems. Come with me. Lu Chusha was dragged out. Everyone was still looking at Gu Jingze. People had heard the rumors that Gu Jingze was very scary, but today was the first time they really saw it. When Gu Jingze was angry, the entire atmosphere was simply shocking. Nobody dared to say anything. They could only watch as the ladies get dragged out. Meanwhile, Gu Jingze declared, Lin Che was unhurt this time. Otherwise, if something really happened to her, I don't care who the next person is. I will not let her off. Although he wasn't looking at anyone specifically, Lu Chusha only felt cold sweat on her body. Thankfully, she was a Lu family member. She suddenly had this thought in her head. Otherwise, would the person being taken away be her? Thankfully, his sister was her brother's wife. Just with this level alone, he couldn't possibly do anything to the Lu family so easily. Furthermore, he was on good terms with Lu Baikan. Otherwise, today would really be. Lu Chusha didn't expect this Lin Li to be so useless. She only managed to make Lin Che fall into the water. And because she fell into the water, nobody actually cared about Lu Chusha's results. Instead, everybody's attention was turned to Lin Che. The score she got this time was much better than the previous times. Furthermore, she looked so good riding a horse, but none of these people cared at all. In the distance, Han Kaiying already knew that something happened, but when she saw Lin Li being taken away, she dared not approach at all. Lin Yu was still upset. Mom, you see, that Lu Chusha was clearly the evil mastermind, but now, the person being taken away is Lin Li. Han Kaiying quickly said, that's enough. Don't go over there. It's too scary. Gu Jingze is so scary. We have no way of challenging him. Don't go over. Don't go over there at all. Mom. Han Kaiying was really frightened to the bone. She had never seen how these elites treated people. It was all the more she had never seen Gu Jingze this way. That attitude made her believe that if anyone dared to approach him, they would be immediately killed by his attitude. Han Kaiying said, forget it. Lin Li asked for it herself. You better not go there. Otherwise, Gu Jingze is too scary and it wouldn't be good if you implicate us. These people are too much. Just because they have the power, they are bullying people like this. Let's leave this place as soon as possible. Han Kaiying truly never thought that these powerful people could really do anything they wanted. Those small matters to undermine Lin Che in the past were all merely child's play. These C-Nation elites were truly the ones unafraid of anything. She simply didn't dare to fight with these people. How could she afford to? Mom, what are you doing? Lin Yu was being taken away by her mother. She didn't dare to look back, neither did she dare to ask what was going to happen to Lin Li. In the room, Lu Qinyu said, all right, little Che. If there's nothing much, don't take part in tomorrow's competition. No, Lin Che quickly replied. I want to take part in it. I'm actually fine. Lin Che really felt fine and energetic. She didn't need to stop. Lu Qinyu said, that's enough. Just take a look at yourself. It's just a competition. If it's because of some bet you made, I'll make that brat Chusha call it off. If you're going to play so seriously, that's not right. Chapter 459, Is she going to lose? No, Uncle Lu, I just don't want to give up. I've been practicing for so long. I learned fencing and ballet. Now, I don't want to not go just because of this small matter. Won't all my hard work be for nothing? It wasn't easy to learn them and I still want to show what I've got to everyone. Lu Qinyu heard this and only looked at Lin Che. She was like her, just like her. You are a fighter, just like your mother. He sighed and said, okay. I'll get the attendants to make some soup for you. If you need anything else, you can always tell me. I will support you with everything I can. Lin Che could only smile. Thank you, uncle, but I really am much better now. Just then, Lin Che saw that Gu Jingze was already standing at the door. She had no idea how long he had been listening there. Lu Qinyu saw that Gu Jingze was here and said to him that if anything happened, he could use the whole Lu family's power. Lu Qinyu told Gu Jingze not to treat himself as an outsider and then left. Gu Jingze came in and tucked Lin Che with the blanket. He looked deeply at her as if he already heard what she said just now. He didn't say anything else and only said, get some rest after drinking the ginger soup. Lie down and don't move. Lin Che thought about it clearly. She knew that she had already come so far. If she really gave up now, it would only make Lu Chusha happy. However, she overestimated her body. Unexpectedly, disaster came like a chain reaction. The next day, she really caught a cold. When Lin Che woke up, she felt like her throat was already smoking. It looked like being soaked in the water yesterday and walking straight back exposed her to the wind. This resulted in her cold. Lin Che looked around. Today was fencing. She didn't tell Gu Jingze about her throat. She was worried that he would make a mountain out of a molehill. It wouldn't be good if he didn't let her take part in the competition. However, after what happened yesterday, Lin Che could immediately feel that people were looking at her differently when she came out of her room. The jealous people were more jealous and the curious people were more curious. Naturally, when Gu Jingze came out, all those people dispersed. Gu Jingze saw that Lin Che was dressed thinly. He waved at the attendant to take a shawl. He personally draped it over her shoulders and looked at her. Why did you come out like that? This is an island. It is very humid. Lin Che chuckled, I'm not that weak. Let's go. At the side, some ladies watched Gu Jingze with blushed faces and then quickly shied away. Gu Jingze was oblivious to them, but Lin Che pursed her lips in her mind. After yesterday's incident, these ladies seemed to be getting closer. Seriously. In the fencing arena, Lin Che changed into her suit and looked at her sword. Lu Chusha saw Lin Che and immediately walked over, pushing Lin Che to the side. Some people saw Lu Chusha arrive and quickly made way for her. At the same time, they sucked up to her. Chusha, you were really great at horse riding yesterday. All-rounded women like you are simply too rare. No, you are the one and only in our C nation. Chusha, you'll definitely do even better in today's fencing competition. Yes, you simply have no rival in C nation. Naturally, besides having the Gu family, C nation also has the Lu family. The young mistress of the Gu family never liked to come out and socialize, so in C nation, Lu Chusha's position was unrivaled. Lu Chusha smiled in her suit. She turned her head to look at Lin Che. I'll make you leave the WW party today. Prepare your speech of defeat. I'll be waiting for you to say that you can't match up to me. After that, she turned and left. The fencing competition was about to begin. Gu Jingze was still at the spectator stand, looking down below. The people at the side wanted to approach Gu Jingze but were shaken by his ice-cold eyes. They didn't dare to approach him and could only watch him from afar. Below, Lin Che cursed internally when she drew her lot. This was obviously arranged by Lu Chusha. Lin Che's opponent turned out to be her. However, defeating her would give her a higher score. She looked at her sword and suddenly felt a bout of dizziness. It seemed like the cold was still affecting her. Just then, she heard the announcement outside that the competition was about to start. Lin Che walked out and could hear some of the young lads on the stands. Since yesterday, they converted from being Lu Chusha's fans to Lin Che's fans because Lin Che really looked good on a horse. They were visual creatures after all. Hearing people calling her name, Lin Che was rather embarrassed. She looked up to see those lads who in turn went crazy. They exclaimed, Lin Che. Lin Che. I'll support you. Fight on, Lin Che. Whatever you want, I will support you. Tell me if you need anything. Lin Che heard this and blushed even more. These rich playboys. However, Gu Jingze turned to look at them. His dark face made them tone down a lot. They could only look ahead and quietly support her. Lu Chusha saw this and was even angrier. These men were too much. Seeing one and liking one they only knew about Lin Che yesterday, and now they were already biased towards her. Lu Chusha suddenly wondered if this bet with Lin Che and bringing her to this high-end event meant that she was on the losing end. Because she never thought that these people would like Lin Che. Lu Chusha huffed and lunged forward first. Lin Che then reacted and quickly retaliated. Lu Chusha's fencing could only be considered normal. Because of Lin Che's cold, her head throbbed and ached periodically. She felt as if she could fall to the ground at any minute. She had no energy to defend herself, so she could only listen as the referee at the side give Lu Chusha 1 point after another. Lin Che also wondered if she was losing. Was she going to lose just like this? Then Lu Chusha's scheme yesterday really worked. She didn't die and wasn't injured, but because of a cold. It was already chaotic on the stands. Everyone watched as Lin Che stumbled and retreated. They couldn't help but say, it seems like from comparing their abilities, Lu Chusha is indeed much stronger than Lin Che. Yes, Lin Che is completely out of it. Lin Che is done for. Lu Chusha is indeed C Nation's top socialite. It looks like nobody can displace her. So if Lin Che really loses, won't she have to leave Gu Jingze? Everyone inevitably looked at Gu Jingze and thought that he and Lu Chusha were indeed matching. However, no matter who was with a man like Gu Jingze, the ladies would still feel indignant. On the other hand, the men were very happy. If Gu Jingze doesn't want her, I do. I think Lin Che is really not bad. Get lost. Lin Che is mine. Right at this moment, the atmosphere was still anxious in the arena. But just then, Lu Chusha thrust her sword forward. Chapter 460. Mr. Satu turned out to be her master. Lin Che immediately stepped back, but she lost her footing and almost fell. When everybody exclaimed, someone suddenly grabbed hold of Lin Che. Lin Che, this is all that you've got. Lin Che froze. She looked up and saw Satu Chong in front of her. She thought that she was dreaming. You. Satu Chong's face was cold and had the same annoying expression. He pushed her back up. He looked at Lin Che. You made it sound so nice when you said that you wanted to triumph over yourself. Even if you knew you'd lose, you wouldn't give up. Aren't you giving up now? Lin Che clenched the sword in her fist, but I've caught a cold and I'm feeling unwell. In fencing, the most important thing is not your body, but your sword. Satu stared at her. Even if your body is handicapped and you can't move, your sword can still move. This means that you can still attack your opponent. If you don't even know this, don't go around telling people that I taught you fencing. Lin Che froze. She instantly felt ashamed and wanted to burrow herself in a hole. Yes, she forgot about all of it because her body was weak and she was attacked first. She forgot about everything. But the competition was not over and she still had a chance. Lin Che stood up, looked at Satu Chong, and retorted, the competition hasn't ended yet. Why are you scolding me? I won't let you have the chance to scold me. Satu Chong looked at the brilliant glimmer in her eyes. Lin Che was energetic once again as she stood there. She smiled and said in a voice that was neither too soft nor too loud, of course. A disciple of me, Satu Chong, won't be defeated that easily. Everybody was surprised. Who was that person down there? It was Satu Chong, the Satu Chong who never liked to appear in front of others. He was the second young master of the Satu family. The Satu family, known as the King of Ships, had almost as much influential power as the Lu family in C Nation. It was a pity that they were too low profile, so they weren't often mentioned. Now, Satu Chong actually said that Lin Che was his disciple. Of course, everyone knew that he was a fencing legend. Because of his family's business, he never appeared on the fencing stage after that. However, he was still a legend. Meanwhile, Lin Che was actually declared by Satu Chong as his disciple. That meant that Lin Che was probably the only one whom he admitted as his disciple. This Lin Che really made everyone feel more and more amazed at her. Gu Jingze was her man, the Lu family respected her, and the second young master of the Situ family was now her fencing master. What values did she have to be able to know so many people who were impossible for others to get close to? In the fencing arena, Lin Che took up her sword again and faced Lu Chusha. I was letting you have some fun. Now it's payback time. Without saying anything else, her sword rushed forward and started fencing with Lu Chusha. Lin Che wasn't considered skilled, but Sichu's training was very effective. Her skills weren't exceptional, but she was stronger than Lu Chusha, who was physically weak. Lin Che put all her strength on her sword and focused, making it difficult for Lu Chusha to retaliate. Not long after, points from the referee were already accumulating on Lin Che's side. Situ watched from the side. This strong, brave and energetic woman named Lin Che seemed to blossom like a rose. She was so captivating. Finally, Lin Che leads with 45 points. Lin Che wins. Lu Chusha stood there dazed with her sword still in her hand. The spectators watching from above were also stunned. In the later part, she practically couldn't retaliate as she stood there and was attacked by Lin Che. She was enraged. She threw her sword to the ground and grunted at Lin Che, "You think winning one round is enough? Humph, I'll let you see tomorrow." After that, Lu Chusha turned and ran away. Lin Che stood there. She was still in shock from hearing that she won. Wow, she really won. She won. She took off her headgear and felt as if she was in a dream. Because she was fighting solely on willpower, her body was already too weak. After she took off her headgear, her hair was already drenched from her own sweat. Sweat droplets also formed on her face. She looked so beautiful, like a beauty who just stepped out of water. Because of fencing, she didn't doll up. However, that bare face looked ever more crystal clear. The men on the stands were really stunned. Especially with how she charmingly took off her headgear, this woman was really captivating. Every movement of hers was perfect and she was so amazingly beautiful. On the stands, Gu Jingze noticed how those men were looking at her. He pursed his lips and stood up. Looking at Lin Che, he thought that she was indeed a unique woman. On the other hand, he was exasperated at how inviting this woman looked. Did she know how these men were staring at her? He turned his head and looked plainly at those men. He took a deep breath and said to the bodyguard beside him, "See who is staring at my wife and gouge out his eyes for me." Everybody quickly stopped and pretended to look elsewhere. Gu Jingze was so ruthless, who knew if he would really do such a thing? After all, nobody here ever dared to challenge him. Even though they were all wealthy people, there was still a hierarchy in statuses. Furthermore, apart from being tyrannical, Gu Jingze liked playing bad. In the arena, Lin Che took off her suit and felt a bout of weakness. She almost fell. Situ Chong then walked over and helped her up. Lin Che said, "I told you that I would win. Do you still dare to scold me now?" "Yes, you won," he smiled at her. She only trained for a month and she really ended up winning. From the beginning, he thought that she wouldn't be able to persevere. In the end, he thought that she didn't learn well. Even later on, he thought that she couldn't win. Now, he really had to eat his own words. He thought that a woman whom Gu Jingze fancied would indeed be different somehow. That was the only way to attract Gu Jingze. Just then, Gu Jingze already made his way down. He had no relationship with Situ Chong. Even at this point, he was impolite. He looked at Situ Chong and then reached out to take Lin Che. Lin Che said, "I'm fine, I'm just tired." Gu Jingze said, "Don't move. I'll carry you." Lin Che didn't reject either because she was really tired. She felt as if she had no energy to walk anymore. She also didn't want to bother about those people on the stands or whatever was going on there. She only wrapped her arms around Gu Jingze's neck. She turned her head and said to Situ Chong, "Remember to watch my ballet performance tomorrow." "Yes, okay, but do you know how to dance ballet? Don't tell me that you only learned that recently too."